Welcome to Beat Cancer, the official podcast of the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center. Thanks for joining us today as we have in-depth discussions of the science, research, and advancements taking place at our National Cancer Institute designated Comprehensive Cancer Center. I'm Chris Joyce.
And I'm Stephanie Winn. We'll also examine proactive approaches to cancer prevention, and most importantly, how we are breaking barriers to beat cancer in our community and beyond. Joining us today is Dr. Joseph Tuscano. He is a professor of internal medicine specializing in the treatment of blood cancers, and he's part of our adult stem cell transplant team. Dr. Tuscano has also been researching non-toxic cancer treatments, which we'll touch upon today. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Tuscano. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and a proud member of the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center.
We know you are doing so much in the area of research into blood cancers, but also, again, this focus on non-toxic cancer treatments. Why is that so important to you?
Well, number one is that so cancer therapies have notoriously been very, very toxic. For years, many patients are fearful of getting cancer treatment because they've had loved ones or heard stories that have gone through the ravages of chemotherapy, poisons, as many people describe them. And we know that while these treatments in some cases are the best thing that we have for patients, we do know that they're brutal. They can shorten people's lives occasionally. And many patients, especially older patients, can't tolerate them. And they can't tolerate enough of them to actually have a chance at receiving effective therapy.
So what alternatives are you looking at when it comes to, especially with the blood cancer patients? We've got immunotherapy, right? So I know that you're definitely leveraging some of the progress we're making there, and with stem cell therapy as well, even CAR T cell therapy that we're manufacturing these CAR T cells right on site. But what other alternatives show a lot of promise?
So we're working on three different areas. We're working on an alternative product that it's a natural product that was kind of discovered serendipitously, and that's a fermented wheat germ product. We're also working on what we call engagers or bispecific or multi-targeted proteins or antibodies, where it recruits different components of the immune system to the site of the cancer. And then we're also working on cellular therapy or CAR Ts to make them much more effective so that they'll remain in the body for long periods of time and improve the chances of being cured. So I can elaborate on any of those if you'd like.
That would be great if you can. Yeah, I'm really interested to find out actually about all three, starting with the fermented wheat germ.
So this is a very interesting story. I would consider myself a traditional oncologist, scientist, immunologist, and I really believed in traditional science. And one of my patients that was a very smart, he was an aeronautical engineer, and he developed a particularly deadly form of lymphoma called mantle cell lymphoma. And he had gone to Stanford and UCSF and asked for their opinions on treatment, and they said chemotherapy, maybe a stem cell transplant. And he felt that was way too toxic, and that he did not want to receive poisons, as he described it. So he actually found out about me based on a fundraiser I had every year, and we solicited donations from wineries, and he owned a winery. And so he understood that we did these immunotherapeutics, and so he came to me and said, "I do not want poisons, and even if I die from my disease, I'd rather use something more natural." And I told him that that's fine, that there are a lot of natural products out there that are potentially effective, that might have very promising activity, but they just aren't studied well, and you're taking a risk. He understood that and was willing to take that risk, and traveled. He was, of good means, and so he traveled the world looking for alternative therapies. And one day he came back and his lymphoma was shrinking, and I asked him what he was taking, and he said a fermented wheat germ product. And that sparked my interest that this is actually shrinking his cancer. So basically, I told him, and so after I saw that, I said, well, we need to test this in our laboratory of models of human cancer, human lymphoma. So he said, sure, and he got me some of the product, and it really did kill the cancer cells in the tissue culture dish as well as in the animals with cancer. And so then he became very interested and started raising money to fund the research, because alternative research is very difficult to get funded. Primarily because it's alternative. It's not mainstream. The major funding institutions, which is mostly the governmental institutions, really aren't equipped to support this type of research. And there's really not a lot of interest in doing that. So he funded the research, and we actually have been working on this now for the last 10 to 15 years, thanks to him and his family, and that have raised over $1 million to support this research. And so we found that there are important components of this fermented wheat germ product. These components directly kill cancer cells, but they also enhance the immune system. And we found that these products not only kill lymphoma cells, which is what my primary interest, but also they kill colon cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, and other malignancies as well. And we found that there's very little toxicity. And what's also very intriguing, it's very inexpensive.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Dr. Tuscano. My dad used to, make smoothies in the morning with wheat germ. And we all had to consume these. He thought that there were a lot of great healthy benefits to doing this. How is this? What is this product like? Is it like the stuff that, has been popular for years in morning smoothies?
Well, that's a really good question. There are some health benefits to wheat germ. There's no question about it. But one of the things that we found is that it's dependent upon fermentation. The actual cancer-killing properties are greatly enhanced by the fermentation process. And we're just now understanding what specifically happens to these proteins. But you have to imagine that this product has thousands of proteins and peptides. And so we're trying to whittle it down. And over 10 or 12 years, many, many hours and months of research, we've got it down to probably 10 or 15. And we're getting close to identifying the active components, which would create a new drug that could be applied to many different types of cancers that are non-toxic and very inexpensive to produce. So it is dependent upon the fermentation process, to answer your question. And we're just now understanding the very specific mechanisms of how it works in the body and why it doesn't cause much toxicity at all.
Who came up with this fermented wheat germ?
Well, the one thing is that the health benefits of fermented products have been kind of discussed and talked about for hundreds of years, particularly in the East. So in the Far East, a lot of fermented products are used to consume and to based on their health benefits as well. But no one's really understood exactly what it does or what these fermented products do. They've seen benefits, and actually it's not been well documented. So there's fermented, I think kimchi, there's fermented mushrooms, there's fermented wheat products, or grain products. So a lot of fermented products that have potential health benefits. And the original product was developed in Hungary, but it's a very crude product And there weren't very many rigorous studies examining exactly how it worked. So that's what I was interested in, and then identifying the active components. And in fact, it's pretty interesting. We had a lot of very good data looking at this, and so we tried to get a SBIR, Small Business Research Grant from the NIH. And they said, this is very interesting, but you have to identify the active components before we can support it. And so I said, well, we need money to do that. It's not cheap, and it's actually very complicated and hard. I've realized it seems like it would be easy, but it's really not. Separating out.
So we don't have patients enrolled in the clinical trial.
So we do. So we have two products actually now, a third. The first product is a very crude product. The next level we purified it, and it seems much purer and more potent. And then the ones we're working on most recently are the purified identified components. So right now, thanks to the support of the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center, we're doing a human clinical trial. And that human clinical trial is mostly in patients with non-blood cancers, and with colon cancer and bladder cancer and breast cancer and melanoma and renal cancer. And we're giving them a few weeks of this, and then we're studying their immune system before and after. And then
how are you giving it? How are you administering it?
You just ingest it. You can just mix it with some orange juice, or you can put it in the capsule and drink it. It doesn't really have any toxicity that we've identified. And we're looking at it in patients that respond to immunotherapies, because it does augment the immune response. And so that's what we're focusing on. And so hopefully, I think we've enrolled probably about 30 patients. And we, once we acquire enough samples, we're going to analyze what it does to the immune system. Also, one of the things, I don't know if you're interested or not, is that we're studying the microbiome of the bowels.
Tell us about that.
So one of the things that is becoming evident is that our bowels are lined with our bowels, and our GI tract is lined from our mouth to our anus, is lined with bacteria, and it's a symbiotic relationship with our body. And only in the last, decade or so, we're realizing that we call it the microbiome of our GI tract, is critical for not only regulating our immune system, but also modulating our ability to repair and our cardiac function, our cognitive function. But what I'm interested, our immune function. And we believe that the fermented wheat germ product probably modulates that microbiome. And so we're going to try to study it and prove it. And we're very fortunate at UC Davis. We have these wonderful core facilities that can actually specifically examine our microbiome and figure out how it's changing.
With the wheat germ affecting the immune system, do you see an application with the fermented wheat germ in conjunction with some of the more traditional treatments like chemotherapy or anything, that they work together? So maybe the fermented wheat germ, because it boosts the immune system, that it reduces some of the negative impact that our traditional treatments are creating.
Yeah, that's a great question. You think like a scientist. Exactly right. So that's what we've done in animal studies. So we've taken a standard immune therapies and that rely on the immune system, and many patients with cancer have defective immune systems. That's why they develop cancer in the first place in a lot of cases, not in every case. And so we did that, and in an animal model, we found that by giving this wheat germ to an animal, it enhanced their immune response and was able to kill the cancer with traditional immunotherapies much better. And in fact, so we did it. This is really interesting, at least to me. I have odd interests, I guess. But so we did a trial in animals with lymphoma, and some of the animals didn't get any treatment, and some of the animals got standard chemotherapy with immunotherapy, and that's the standard approach. And then some got immunotherapy alone, and then some got the wheat germ alone, and then some got the wheat germ with the immunotherapy. And we compared them all and see who had the highest cure rate. And we found that the highest cure rate was with the immunotherapy and the wheat germ. And that was better than the standard chemotherapy. So you could eliminate all of the chemotherapy in these animals, and you got a better remission from it. And it was probably a lot cheaper too, although the mice didn't complain of cost.
Well, tell us about the other, you had mentioned 2 other clinical trials and studies that you're undergoing, or at least researching. Can you touch on those a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the things I do is not only do I have a research lab, I also have a clinical trials program that I'm a director of stem cell transplantation here in cellular therapy, so we do that as well. So I do drug development in the lab, but also I do some clinical trials as well. So that with the other additional drugs that we're developing, there are 2 different approaches. One of them is what we call multi-specific targeted antibodies. And so an antibody is a protein that our body makes, and what that does is it binds to a target, and that target then it flags that target for elimination by our immune system. Okay, and that's how these antibodies work. And they've been available for the treatment of cancer and other diseases for probably 25 years or so. And they're pretty effective. They're not 100% effective. And so the next step was to create what we call bispecific antibodies, where they have 2 arms. One arm binds to the cancer, the other arm actually physically binds to the immune system and brings it to the site of the cancer. And that's the next wave of immunotherapies. And it's looking pretty fantastic for not only blood cancers, but some solid cancers like lung cancer as well. So what we're taking it a step further by creating a 3rd and 4th arm on those proteins. They're called tri or tetra-specific antibodies. And so what we've done is that we've created a form that will bind to the target, the cancer target. It will bind to the immune component, but it will then feed that immune component with agents that enhance its activity. So we grab them, enhance them, and bring them to the site of the cancer. And it's looking very, very effective. And the tetra-specific form does that, but to another level. So we can enhance them in multiple different ways, through the front door, through the back door, and the side door as well. And to make those T cells or natural killer cells ready to kill as soon as they get to the target. The one nice thing about these is that, and also we've recruited some really manufacturing, because they're very difficult to manufacture, but now both in the United States and other countries, they can manufacture these things pretty inexpensively now. And they can create these different molecules. It's almost like Legos putting these together, and then we can test them in the lab. So and we're seeing it's very effective and relatively non-toxic as well. So we're pretty excited about that. And the other nice thing about it, so we have a target, we call it CD22. It's on most blood cancers. And I've published on that for years. But it's like Lego. So we see that works. We can just change the target. We can change it out for what we call HER2, which is found on breast cancer cells. We can change it out and put it in target the epidermal growth factor receptor, or EGFR, which is on a lot of head and neck cancers, or maybe colon cancer or lung cancer. So these are potentially applicable to other malignancies as well, this type of science. So we're pretty excited about that as well. And then the third approach, and we actually combine several of these. The third approach is, so CAR T cellular therapy, really what that is that our immune cells are defective. We already talked about that. And that's probably why a lot of us develop cancer in the first place. So what it's been done is this scientist by the name of Carl June at the University of Pennsylvania really said, okay, I'm going to take the T cells out of the body and I'm going to re-engineer them genetically with a virus and create a new target, a new receptor, and we're going to make them really angry. And then grow them up on an immune cell farm. And then we're going to reintroduce them in the patients. And that's what cellular therapy, or CAR-T, CAR stands for chimeric antigen receptor T cells. And so he pioneered that work, and he initially did it in pediatric patients and found that it retargeted our immune response to the cancer. And in pediatric patients that had failed everything, including a transplant, about 80% went into remission, and about 30 to 40% were cured. And these are all children that would have died within probably 6 months. Pretty amazing. So that, there was a firestorm, I think it was probably on the cover of Time, started studying it in other cancers as well, including lymphoma and multiple myeloma. It's being studied now in solid tumors as well. The problem, though, is 30 to 40%, can we do better than that? Also, it's still a little bit toxic as well. So one of the reasons that we found out, there's a couple things, is that the reason why it fails is twofold. There's probably multiple reasons, but two major reasons is that the cancers are pretty smart, okay? They'll say, okay, you guys are going after this target, your T cells. I'm just going to get rid of that target and modulate it, okay? So, and so that's what happens. It loses its target. Okay, the other thing is that just like what happens as we age, the T cells get a little exhausted, okay? And there is T cell exhaustion, and there are markers for that. They get tired, and they don't work as well when they're tired. So what we found is that if we can reverse that exhaustion, then we can those T cells will hang around longer and remain effective for long periods of time.
This all sounds so encouraging, Dr. Tuscano. How you must be spending a lot of time, seeking research dollars, because you've got so many promising therapies that seem to be at your fingertips. Tell us how you're going about that in terms of raising money for research.
Yeah, so that's probably my weakest suit. Because I have, and I'll also have guilt issues because I was born and raised a Catholic. And so I have a hard time asking for money. I'm not very good at that.
But we have people to help you here. Hopefully you're tapping the folks that really know how to do that.
Right. And what I've found is that there are a lot of really generous people out there. And that really will, they may not be of a lot of means, but there are a lot of generous people that want to help. And what they've taught me, the development, is that you just have to tell them what you're doing and ask them for help. A lot of people want to help, and they feel good about helping.
Tell us about the Crush Challenge, which is really, it's getting bigger and bigger every year in the Napa Valley.
Right. So that all goes back to the wheat germ, really, that story. Where the and I could say the name, the Deleuze family, the Norman Deleuze was the rocket scientist, turned winemaker that came to me initially, and really taught me to think outside the box with these alternative natural products. And ever since then, his family wanted to support the research because they knew how difficult it was to get funding for it. And so they initially started with a winemaker's dinner, and then they recruited many other supporters, and including initially Patrick Dempsey. Patrick Dempsey had the Dempsey Challenge. I think he still might, to support in Maine, I believe, because his mother had breast cancer. And he created this facility to support patients during their cancer journey. So he created the Dempsey Challenge. And so he helped come out and kick off the Crush Challenge. which is a bicycle event and a wine tasting and eating event, which I like all three of those, to raise money for this and the Girls and Boys Club of Napa Valley, which the Delors family is very interested in. So, and very supportive of. And so, it's an event that occurs in usually the crush, usually the late summer, early fall, where a bunch of cyclists come together in Napa Valley and they ride and they taste wine, and then a lot of the local wineries and restaurants come together and they put up booths, and everybody really, and there's music and people have a really good time, and they raise money to support this kind of research. They've created an endowment here at the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center that will support this type of research indefinitely. And that endowment has about $1 million in it. So that will go on indefinitely, but they continue to support the research every single year.
And it's exciting that the family's still passionate about that pursuit, even though it won't benefit their own family member in the immediate. They know that it's going to help potentially thousands, millions moving forward.
Yeah, it's a great event. It's a lot of fun. You don't have to drink wine. You can just eat and mingle, and there's beautiful music and a lot of nice people come out, and it's just a fun event.
Dr. Tuscano, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to touch on that maybe we didn't?
The only other thing is that now we're combining some of these research efforts together. And so what we're doing is that these multi-targeted proteins I talked to you about, well, we're combining those with the CAR-Ts. So we're recruiting the CAR-Ts to different targets and trying to reactivate them with these. So we're putting these. So one of the things, you develop these things independently, and then you can put them together to create even more effective therapies. You change the target to treat more cancers. So you can see the important thing about this is that when you think you're focusing on one malignancy and you're on one therapy, but then you realize that it has broad implications for multiple different types of cancers, maybe multiple different types of diseases that really have enormous downstream benefits.
So let me ask you just a real quick question. Even, if you're not fighting cancer, is it a good thing to be consuming wheat germ on a regular basis? Does it have any preventative benefit?
That's a really good question. And so I'm always cautious about this. We're trying to get this published right now. We did an animal model of colon cancer. So there's a model where if you give colon, these special animals a diet rich in certain products, they'll develop colon cancer. We gave them wheat germ, the fermented product, and there was a significant reduction in the incidence of colon cancer.
That sounds very promising.
Yeah. So is it ready for me to recommend to human patients? Not quite, but what's the downside? I'm not sure. You have to be really careful making recommendations without substantial evidence. So I'm very, very cautious about that.
Yeah, and just as the reminder that we do whenever we talk about these things is that if you are considering any type of alternative treatment, that you discuss every bit of this with your primary care and your oncologist, because they are going to know your individual case best. And the things that we're talking about today don't necessarily apply to every situation across the board or every cancer or every treatment.
Well put.
Well, Dr. Tuscano, we really thank you for joining us today. This has been not only enlightening, but very intriguing as well to hear about the new studies that you've been embarking on and the continued research that you're doing. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for a great discussion and disseminating this information to all those interested.
Thank you for all you're doing for our patients at the Cancer Center, Dr. Tuscano.
Well, thank you. It's a team effort, and we're all part on the same team.
Thank you for tuning in and listening today. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us directly at beatcancer@ucdavis.edu. Beat Cancer is a production of the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center. For more information on our NCI-designated Comprehensive Cancer Center, please visit health.ucdavis.edu/cancer.